Greetings, and welcome back to the MCOC Encyclopedia. Today, we'll be finishing our journey in Act 7, covering all of the easiest parts. If multiple parts are an option in a quest, I will cover them all. Remember that these are just what I found easier, and your roster and experiences may vary. So let's dive in. Act 7, Chapter 4, Quest number 6. No tomorrow. Well, not for Kang anyway. This quest presents us with two possible options for the path. One that is, in my opinion, slightly easier, but makes Kang fractionally harder, and one that is slightly harder, but makes Kang fractionally easier. Which one is actually easier really depends on your roster and what you are comfortable with. Our first path is through Teleporter 1A, then down, and it's not a paradox path. It's been a while since we've seen one of those. Here we'll find just 3 nodes: Smorgasbord, Foresight, and Bubble Shield. Foresight is not a new node to us and is purely advantageous. Intercept the opponent for a Mega Fury. Bubble Shield is hardly new either. Blocking a hit reduces your block proficiency, and every 10 blocked hits, the defender's next attack will be unblockable regardless of whether it actually hits you or not. The tricky node here is Smorgasbord, and it can take a little bit of getting used to. The defender has a 100% chance to purify all incoming debuffs, and that includes your parry stuns, and whenever they do purify a debuff, they gain a snack charge. Every 30 seconds, all snack charges are removed, and the defender will either regen or degen, depending on how many charges they had. If they had 9 or fewer charges, they will regen, and 10 or more will cause them to degen instead. So apply a lot of debuffs and it's free damage, but if you lose the race against the timer, they will regenerate, and it's a big regeneration, 25% of their max health. It's also a passive, so we can't nullify, stagger or fate seal it, and given any debuffs we apply will be purified, reducing or reversing it can be quite difficult. Champions with passive heal blocks or heal block effects, like Mysterio or Warlock, can block this out, but the defenders on the path don't really favour these attackers. Champions like Count Nefaria that can just block out regen as part of their own kit can work, but it's much easier to just apply the debuffs. Then you get free damage. Champions that apply a lot of debuffs, or have a good chance on their basic attacks, or can apply a lot of debuffs in other ways, are our best options here. Silk, Luke Cage, Spider-Ham, Cassie Lang, Titania, Joe Fixit, OG Black Panther, Black Widow Deadly Origins, Sunspot, and many others. They're all great options. Don't worry too much if not having the debuff will really hurt their damage output, like Spider-Ham or Scorpion, as the degen damage from the node will make up for this. If you're using a champion that applies a lot of debuffs but has one stack, like Angela and her armor breaks on specials, then you don't need to worry, as these are treated as multiple debuffs by the game. Finally, do remember that your regular damage still works absolutely fine here. Yes, they can regenerate a lot if you're not watching it, but if you can out-damage it, particularly with Foresight, then you have much less to worry about. When it comes to defenders, Hercules, Yondu and Warlock are the ones to watch out for, with the other 3 not providing too much of an issue. Our other path is also through Teleporter 1A, but now upwards, and this one is a paradox path. Here we have Paradox Knockdown, Entropic Generator, Quantum Inversion, Power Alternator, and Kinetic Instigator. This is a paradox path, we know how these work by now. Paradox Knockdown will give us a charge each time we knock down the defender, and Entropic Generator will give us plus 20% combat power rate per charge on us. It'll also let us remove a charge with a light ending combo. As always, if you get to 12 charges, all of them are removed, and you take a big burst of damage. The issue on this path comes from Quantum Invasion. Whilst you have fewer than 3 charges, the defender is fully and passively unblockable. Not only is this quite annoying, as the defender is unblockable, but it means that it can be much more difficult to get an opening to knock them down. No parrying for heavies. Let's see what the other nodes offer us, and if that will help. Power Alternator will swap your power with the defenders every 15 seconds, if you have more power. If you have less, then it will stay as it is. This isn't helpful, but Kinetic Instigator is. This will give you power when you strike the opponent's block, and this can be very helpful in reaching our special ones so we can knock the opponent down for some charges. If you can intercept the opponent as well, then gaining power can also be done this way, but if not, this node will help a lot. Champions that can chain heavies from their basic combos such as Doom, Silk, Wasp and America Chavez are amazing for this path for ramping up very quickly. Do note though that they often knock down the opponent a lot, so you will need to keep an eye on your charges. Once we have some charges, just enjoy the increased power gain, but do watch out for Power Alternator. As for defenders, we have Chavez and Mephisto to look out for. I would highly recommend you go into these problem fights already ramped up to offset the difficulty a bit, and maybe bring an Incinerator meme for that Mephisto as well that doesn't inflict Incinerates of their own. You can also cheese this path a bit, but see the 7.4.5 videos for all the details on this. Champions with reliable stuns on their specials can get back to that special with the increased power gain, so you can just stun lock the opponent in the corner. This path does have a linked node to Kang that will place bleeds on him, but we will explore that more when we understand this boss a bit better. And if this video is helping you at all, please stun lock that like button. Right, the self-proclaimed superior Kang. Well, he is of the superior class, but the other one wasn't called Tech Kang, was he? Anyway, let's see how this guy works. As with all big bosses, you can find his full abilities breakdown on Khonshu's Ankh that I will link in the description. This is the part of the video you watch several times. Better to rewatch it now than to use revives later. The first thing we need to know about this Kang is that he has about 650,000 health, but each time you would knock him down, he will instead rewind time and recover all of his health, removing all effects from himself, resetting your slipstream charges that we'll cover in a moment, removing all of his own power, and moving the fight into the next phase. Once you knock him out for the fourth time, he can no longer rewind time, and you win the fight. Each phase progression is permanent, no having to do each phase multiple times if you get knocked out. Kang caps all incoming damage to 3% of his max health, or just under 20,000 damage. He also reduces all incoming damage by 75%, but we'll be turning this damage reduction off throughout the fight. On top of this, Kang is immune to power and special lock, and the potency of power steal, drain and burns are reduced by 60%. Finally, we can't alter his ability accuracy or regeneration rate, nor can we break his block with heavy attacks. Finally, your true strike, accuracy and sense effects suffer minus 200% ability accuracy if you are running them, and this is a good thing as we will see, and your willpower and despair masteries are disabled. Despair does not make much difference here, though willpower will hurt a little bit. Now onto the meat of this fight, the time stream analysis. If you attack Kang while he is stunned, dashing in, performing a heavy, or recovering from a special attack, he will instead counter-attack you. Learn these 4 actions, this is what you'll be looking for in the fight, and you will be doing approximately a minimum of 30 of these throughout the fight. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but that is the minimum. This counter-attack is an initial hit that does no damage, and then a beam shot. Kang will also gain about 30% of a bar of power. If you parry or dex this beam, you gain 1 slipstream charge, and these last between fights. Learning the timing on this counterattack is critical to this fight. So much so, I'm going to say it again. Learning the timing on this counterattack is critical to this fight. Once you get to 10 charges, the next time Kang would counterattack you, or you can just beat into his block, he is instead wounded for 20 seconds, and we can get in some big damage. Whilst he is wounded, he is fully stunned, his damage reduction is disabled, and you gain plus 25% increased combat power rate. Now, if you try and trigger the counterattack using the same action you did last time, say you baited 2 heavies in a row, instead of counterattacking, Kang will now passively stun you for 2 seconds, grant himself a random archive buff, and inflict you with a random archive debuff. What are archive buffs and debuffs? Well, Kang has a pool of buffs and debuffs that he can trigger throughout this fight. We have just seen the first way he can trigger them, and these are referred to as the archive buffs and the archive debuffs. The second way is simply every 15 seconds Kang will trigger a buff on himself and a debuff on you, though this is paused for 2 seconds each time you trigger the counterattack. If Kang triggers 5 of these in one phase, resetting if you die, the 5th one won't trigger the archive, but instead will summon Kang's ship, the Evangelos. This sends him straight to Special 3, and like the other big bosses we have seen, this is an instant KO. No Hercules or Heimdall will save you here. I have done this fight many times, and I have never seen this happen. As long as you trigger the counterattack and are actually hitting him in the wounded phase, this really shouldn't be an issue. The archive starts with Energize, Indestructible and Stun immunity as the archive buffs, and Weakness, Ineptitude, Disorient and Suppression as the archive debuffs. There are over 30 different buffs and debuffs Kang can put in the archive, and I will put a full list on screen now. Each time you gain one of the buffs or inflict one of these debuffs, Kang will add them to the archive, and so he can trigger them now too. Let's have a quick look at Kang's special attacks before we break down the phases themselves. His special 1 will trigger a random archive buff on himself on activation, and a random archive debuff on you for each hit you don't parry or dex. If you dex all hits, you gain an additional slipstream charge. Being able to deal with this special attack reliably is also super important to this fight, as punishing it is one of the ways we gain our charges, and it'll be much more difficult for you to punish it if you get hit. I always watch for the dip of his gun, so it's dex, dex, dex. Just like the special 1, the special 2 will also trigger archive debuffs on you for each hit you don't parry or dex. If you full dex this attack, you gain 2 additional slipstream charges. Though, if you see this special attack, something has sort of gone wrong. You really want to be sticking with the special 1 throughout this fight. As we mentioned earlier, the special 3 is an instant KO, so best avoided. Now you know the core mechanics of this fight, let's have a look at the individual phases. Phase 1, i.e. the first health bar, is just there to warm you up and to help you learn how the fight works. In this phase, Kang cannot use his special 2 at all, and whilst wounded, he will take 30% more damage for each unique buff you have, up to 8 unique buffs. Phase 2 is where things start to get interesting. Kang can now use his special 2, and in his wounded phase, your damage will be increased for 30% for each unique debuff on Kang, again up to 8. The interesting part here is that now whilst performing a counterattack, Kang can change the speed of time, meaning he will either counterattack in slow motion, regular speed, or fast forward. Again, this is all about timing. You need to be able and prepared to deal with the counterattack at the 3 different speeds, or things are going to get very, very messy. In phase 3, Kang will now remember the last 2 actions that he counterattacked rather than just 1, meaning you will need to rotate more to not get stunned. He is now also immune to Nullify, Fate Seal, and Stagger. Finally, your damage boost in this phase is now only 20%, but it is for every buff you have up to 12, not just unique ones. In phase 4, the archive timer is replaced with the Evangelos timer, which lasts 80 seconds. If this timer expires, Kang will special 3 you very hard. Remember, we can pause this timer whenever Kang counterattacks. He can also now change the speed of the fight on his special 1 and 2, as well as on his counterattack, and you will suffer minus 200% ability accuracy reduction on Purify and Cleanse. So this isn't the solution to the archive anymore. Finally, our damage boost here is again 20%, but now it is for up to 12 damaging debuffs on Kang. This is the phase where we can actually knock him out though. In order to knock him out, you will need to wound him, and whilst he has no health, you need to then land 4 or 5 basic attacks. Time will be slowed for these attacks, so you will look extra cool doing it. Returning to our second path option, we have a linked node to deal with, Slipstream Bleed, which is both a good and a bad thing. Each time Kang is wounded, he is inflicted with a bleed debuff dealing a fairly small amount of damage over 20 seconds. The description says 3, but in my testing it was only 1, so not quite sure what's going on there. This debuff counts towards the damage boosts during his phase 2 and 4 wounded phases. However, this has now put a bleed into the archive, meaning that Kang can trigger it on you. They don't deal a huge amount of damage, but you may want to consider a bleed immune option if you are taking the Paradox path. Speaking of, who are good options for this fight? Well, any champion that can reliably trigger a lot of unique buffs or debuffs will do really well here. Hyperion, Hulkling, Hercules, Odin, Angela, and so on will all do great. But our other option is to focus on debuffs and bring Odin to apply his pre-fights. This means we can put 3 unique buffs on one champion, and this will really help you in phase 1 and 3. If you want to use damaging debuff champions, then ones that are immune to their own debuff can be much safer, as the damaging debuff will more than likely end up in the archive. I have seen people recommend champions like Venom or Venom Pool, and maybe if this isn't your first run and you are confident you can dex both the counterattacks and the specials, they could work. But if you start blocking them, then you may bleed yourselves. Remember, no willpower in this fight, so we can't heal from that. Other healing sources do work as normal though. Ultron, Sunspot and Torch are great examples for these damaging debuffs, and they are immune to their own debuffs. Awakened Ultron is particularly good, as he can regenerate incoming energy damage, and all of Kang's beams are considered energy damage. Really, any champion can do this fight, as long as you don't inflict him with damaging debuffs. If your top option is Captain America Infinity War, then don't use your special one, and you'll be fine. Angela? Hell yeah. Jugs? Works great. Shang-Chi? Sure. Titania? Well, she has no buffs, but plenty of debuffs. Null? Sounds amazing, just don't trigger those degens. Bullseye? Go for it. Serpent? Why not? Gore? Actually, Gore sounds like a lot of fun. I might go try Gore. I cannot list every champion that can do this fight, because so many can. If you're unsure, try throwing it into YouTube and seeing if someone else has already tried it. So, for our team. Well, let's start with the smorgasbord path. Titania and Sunspot will clear the path without too many issues, though Warlock may pose a slight threat. Let's bring Gore for him, as he will also be a great boss option, and not just because I want to try him out. Let's round out the team with some more boss options then. Ultron with the Odin pre-fights will do us very well for a full squad. As always, we have the champion swapper if we need it. This could be good for bringing in Odin, as he really won't help much on the path, and swap out for someone that would be more useful. For the Paradox path, Chavez and Silk will do excellently. For the boss, well, the Gore Ultron Odin combo would do us very well, but let's avoid some repetition and bring Captain Marvel movie, Angela, and Gamora. Avoid the special one with Gamora so he can't bleed us. Fairly soon after this video goes out, I will be getting up a long commentated video of me going through both of these paths with the exact teams I suggest above. It will be much more relaxed, but should hopefully give some more insight into how I look at getting around these issues. I will also answer popular questions from the comments of this video and that video, so please leave yours down below. As always, remember that this is just story content, so it won't be going anywhere anytime soon. If you get stuck here and find yourself spending lots of resources, stop and focus on something else. I know you want Paragon, but if you haven't done the rank ups, then getting through this might not help. The monthly event quests and side quests are great places to pick up more materials, shards, and units, as are battlegrounds and the arena. So, that's it. Everything you need to know to clear all of 7.4.6, and hence all of Act 7. I normally say I have a lot of things in the works, and of course we will have the follow-up video, but I need a nap, so I think that's what I will be focusing on in the near future. We will have a tier list update soon as well. If there's anything else you'd like to see, or you have any questions, please do leave them down below. I also have a Discord server linked in the description, so please go and join that. A great place to get specific advice, make suggestions for future video topics, celebrate the new people that have got Paragon, and as long as I'm awake, I do my best to be there as much as possible. Thank you, and I will see you next time.